So anything we make is extra going towards, bigger and better goals. But to be able to live and survive in this world, 3 weeks ago, I got my natural gas bill and it jumped $60 a month. And I'm like,
Oh,
holy cow. But luckily I have budgeting in my powers and able to, shift that around and just take it.
welcome to the Radiant Mom Rising, the podcast that's all about celebrating and empowering the incredible hardworking mothers out there. I'm your host, Mary Dibble. I'm on a mission to equip you with the tools, strategies, and inspiration you need to conquer the challenges of motherhood and life, all while embracing your radiant self. Join us each week for amazing guest interviews, relatable stories, and a whole lot of fun. We're here to create a vibrant, supportive community where we can be our authentic selves, where no one feels alone, and where we uplift and cheer each other on along this incredible journey of motherhood. So, fellow Radiant Moms, get ready to rise, shine, and conquer the world. Let's grow together, laugh together, and make every week a celebration of the powerful, radiant moms we are. This is Radiant Mom Rising, and you're part of a community where your brilliance shines through. Are you ready to rise with us? Let's get started. Thank you for tuning in to the Radiant Mom Rising podcast. I'm Mary Dibble, your host. Today I have a special guest, Dalene Higgins. She's a financial coach for GenXers and host of the Wealthy After 40 podcast. After reaching her dream of retiring early at age 50, she decided she wanted to help others do the same. Now she's on a mission to help GenXers ditch debt, save for retirement, and live life on their own terms. Even though most GenXers feel unprepared for retirement, Dalene believes that it's never too late to start. Because when you get your head out of the sand and get to know your numbers, you'll realize your financial freedom dreams are closer than you think. Today we're going to delve into that for you all. So I'm so excited for you to listen to her, to get to know her better. So without further ado, Miss Dalene Higgins. Thanks for tuning in to the Radiant Mom Rising podcast. I'm Mary Dibble, your host, and today I am joined with the sweet Dalene Higgins. She is the financial coach for GenXers, and she is the owner of Elevate Finances, as well as a host of her own podcast, Wealthy After 40. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ray. I love getting out there and sharing my story and hopefully inspiring people. So
That's what we're all about here on the show, especially
yeah.
as hardworking moms who need a little uplifting to get us through each and every day.
Yes.
Absolutely. So we'd love to hear a little bit about your journey and how that led you into getting into the financial coaching.
Okay. Yeah. So for 32 years, I worked in the government sector and I actually worked in law enforcement. So I did all sorts of, different jobs, different careers within that as I put myself through college, as I was also a mom. And so I majored in accounting and then I did my master's later on. And my last 15 years of my journey in government sector, I was actually a finance manager and my role was to help lieutenants, chief deputies, the sheriff and the undersheriff budget so that they could manage their money. So I helped them budget, we put it together, and then I helped them manage it all year. So I'm working with at least 22 people every year, putting those together, running those, and it was a $60 million budget. So I was in, again, the public sector, which does still have pensions. I was fortunate to have better pensions than they do now. But when I was 35, I was like, oh, it is an option for me. Just because I have a pension doesn't mean this is going to happen. And the reason I say that is the day I would leave, I would take a 40% cut in pay. Yeah, so pension was only paying 60% of your highest wages. So I thought, okay, I'm 35. If I want to retire, so I could have retired at the age of 48. So I'm like, if I want to retire, if I want that even to be an option, I've got to get my ducks in a row. So I really just started getting focused on my budgeting. And as women, right, 85% of households are, women are responsible for managing the money. And again, like we discussed pre-call, there is no formal education. We honestly do this on our own. We do our best. We figure it out. we're probably the best choice. I'm just going to lay that out there. But yet, if something goes awry, we also take on all of that responsibility of shame and embarrassment and it didn't work. But it's easy to feel that way. And it's also easy to say, but you didn't know better, but it's all true. It's all true feelings and everything. So just like everyone listening, I was in that same boat, raising my daughter, going to work every day and trying to make this work because I thought, who knows? Who knows what it's going to be like in 15 years? And so I really got really super hyper focused on my budgeting. And I made sure as I was getting closer to the end that I would be able to do it. So I created a retirement budget on the amounts I estimated to be. So, I know people don't love to hear the word budget, but it was so powerful for me during that time and then to be able to transition into it. So I 32 years, I had just lost both my parents the 2 years prior. I think I was just done with what life had been
Yeah.
because I absolutely loved my job, absolutely loved the people. That's not why I chose to walk away, but I honestly was done with the 9 to 5. I was done with the somebody else's schedule, punching that time clock, being there. And so I said to my husband, I think I'm going to retire next year. He's like, he's 100% supportive. So as I just started thinking, I'm like, okay, but you're 50. What are you going to do? Sit in a recliner all day? So that's when I started looking at what my options could be. What did I want to do? I'm an avid reader. So I did think about maybe I'll go in the schools and help kids read. We have several that are really close. I could volunteer and that would take up some time too. So I kept exploring and I came across the financial coaching sector and it's just really starting to take off. And I thought, why not? I have just reached my big dream, my big financial dream. And why can't I share my experience, the things I learned, the things I messed up on, right? The things that didn't go right for me, why they worked for me to others and let them use those experiences to get there more quickly, more easily and stuff. So that's how Elevate Finances was born. It's been about just over a year and a half in the making. I retired June 1 of 2022, and that was the day I opened my business. So yeah, they just coincided, and I've been an entrepreneur, which an entrepreneur is a whole different game,
Yes.
whole different, aspect, a lot of learning, a lot of growing. So working in law enforcement, we never had to market for people to come to us, right? People just came. They came in floods. There was different things that we had to deal with. So really the marketing and getting out there and advertising and stuff has been a huge growth, learning curve for me. But I've absolutely loved my journey. So while I know the basics of what I can help my clients with and what I want to teach them, it's the trying to reach them and trying to let them know that. And so grateful for people like you allowing me to get my story out, share what it's been like. My husband retired 3 years before I did. And our retirement life, we both still work part-time. And I made sure it wasn't that we would have to because I wanted it to be a choice that was a good choice for us. So anything we make is extra going towards, bigger and better goals, but to be able to live and survive in this world. 3 weeks ago, I got my natural gas bill and it jumped $60 a month. And I'm like,
Ugh.
holy cow. But luckily I have budgeting in my powers and able to, shift that around and just take it. We still hate to see those bills go up, but they are going to.
Of course,
They are going to.
unfortunately, that's the thing we're seeing more and more. And that's why you got to get to a point where you educate yourself. Like you say, there are options out there. And I think that's what's challenging about going down the entrepreneurial, road, but it's also so beautiful because yes, it takes time, but if you just keep showing up and believing in yourself and just taking action towards it, it will flourish. It will flourish. You just have to keep going. And I know that that's the challenging part because for me,
getting myself out there actually was my hardest part, because I felt so unsupported
Yeah.
in my life in so many areas. I mean, I didn't even support myself. So who am I to think that anyone else is going to care about me? But as you can see, as you put yourself out there, you attract amazing people who do care about you and want to see you succeed, want to help you grow. And that's what this podcast is all about. Because I just bring on people here just to share their stories. I want to help you. I want to help you get out there in the world. I want us to all help each other grow, because everyone's success is my success. That's how I see it. So I love to give. And I think that's an amazing journey. And I love that you have been able to learn the budgeting. That is, I think, one of the most difficult things for so many of us.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to somebody right now who is struggling in that department as far as just getting started?
Yeah. Yeah. I know there's a lot of feelings initially and you feel restricted by it because it's laid out. But then I ask people that are struggling with that idea, think about it. You're the one creating it. So if it is feeling restrictive, change it. And so we do have a lot of bills, we do have a lot of responsibilities, and sometimes we may need to let some of those things go if we're feeling restrictive. But I always tell my clients, no matter their amount of money, to always have an element of fun. So I worked with a client this past spring, a lot of debt, really just, it was inflation, it was prices that had got him up above what he was used to spending. He had not adjusted. And so it was really his rent that did it. So we made an adjustment down, and I said, okay, we really had to strip him to nearly nothing. And it was just because of his situation. But I said, what is the one expense that you do not want to let go? What is the one expense for fun that keeps you going night and day? And he is like, that is my Apple Music. That keeps my mental health there. And I said, great. So we kept that in there. And then along with it is his groceries, his car insurance, all of those things for his kids. He had 3 kids, recently divorced. And so I'm like, okay, we have to strip out all of this other, but you can support yourself, you can keep going and then moving forward. So, getting started is the hardest because there's a lot of hiccups. There's a lot of growing pains, right? We learn, we mess up, we have to figure out. So the other thing I want people to is, if they feel like, okay, I made the budget and it's not working, what expense made you think it's not working? And honestly, if it's a certain expense, that needs to be in your budget. And typically, those are expenses that don't happen every month. They're expenses that are very regular in our life, but they're not happening every month. So if we're stuck in that mindset of monthly budgeting, when kids start school and they need clothes and they need new backpacks and they need all those things, that should honestly be in your budget every single month leading up to that, because you can handle that $25 a month, sticking it aside so that when school comes around, you can pay for it. $100 to get in school, plus then I don't know what clothes are costing people anymore, $200. The shoes are expensive. So, just having that prep. So if there's an expense that you feel like has wrecked your budget, look at that expense. Don't say you messed up, your budget messed up. Look at that one expense that you're feeling about and figure out how it can fit in your monthly budget. Whether it's going to happen again in 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months, it needs to be in there if you're going to see it, again and again. Another big one is Christmas, right? Christmas should be in your monthly budget, but it's very easy to just go, okay, what are my responsibilities from payday to payday? Or, oh, what are my responsibilities this month? And we're, just so focused on that immediacy as moms, right? We take care of anything and everything just very immediate. We get the meals planned, we get the meals prepared, we get the kids off to their activities, we're looking ahead. Oh, there's this conflict, and so the budget, you kind of have to stretch and think further ahead. What does 2 or 3 months look like? How are you going to handle those future expenses are coming, and just start planning? So, really getting out of that. Yeah, that. And people say paycheck to paycheck, but really, if that's what you're budgeting, you've got to give yourself some buffer to be able to support those, surprise expenses. So
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so funny because I remember a long time ago doing that Dave Ramsey cash in the envelope thing. And it
yeah,
is funny how sometimes you don't realize even just putting a little $10, $20 away, like really adds up over time. Actually, because of that, I was able to always pay in full every year when my son had to go back into daycare, like the entire thing. But I knew it's going to cost like 800 something or whatever what it's going to cost. So I would just start putting like 30 something dollars a month in an envelope and just disappear, didn't look at it. And then I would always have enough and a little sum too, So it was quite awesome to
yes,
experience and to do. And you can do it in so many areas of your life. And I think that's why it's also important though to lean on people like you, because I don't have strength in many areas of that when it comes to like understanding budgeting and stuff, which is why it's so important to have women like you who are willing to share their expertise, who are willing to come and show up and help guide you and help you get that together. So I highly commend you for taking your knowledge and taking the time to educate yourself so that you can do that in return for others. I think that's a great area that we all need help with. I mean, we all do, especially if you are aspiring to start your own business or you're just wanting to have that financial freedom for yourself in the future. It's easy as we're younger, especially, to not think about the future and retiring. I remember when I worked in the bank, that was something that broke my heart, was all these retired older people who would come in and have $400 to their name for whole months because they didn't think about retiring their whole life. That by the time they got Social Security and that was it, nothing else was prepared, they were stuck. Like that was it. That's all they earned. And so it's so important to think also about that futuristic, like if this is how you're going to retire, this is what you're going to need to do in order to build that. And I'm guessing that's part of what your program is that you teach.
yes, yeah, exactly. I know I get asked the question. So how do you balance now and the future? And I'm like, okay, you've got to extend your mindset, right? What you're thinking. And I want you to envision yourself at the age of 80. Now, if you're in a healthy body at the age of 80, I mean, hopefully you can identify with an 80-year-old who is still running circles around some 50-year-olds, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to have the money to support that vibrant, healthy lifestyle? And so learning to balance like your health, your fun, your entertainment now, but that same level at 80. And so that's what I tell people is like, you can't be living the high life right now. And then, like you were experiencing with those elderly, a very, very low life. That's just not fair. So think about it more as a balance as, okay, well, I want to live very comfortably right now. That looks like this. So can I start putting away for the future to still have that same comfortability in the future, And so not negating the fact that when you're 80, you're going to be in a wheelchair in a care facility. I mean, I hope not. I hope that you're still running circles around, people and traveling if that's what you want to do, and playing with your grandkids and,
Yes.
all the things. So, yeah.
Hey, my mother-in-laws and my father-in-law, they're in their like later 70s, and we play pickleball together on Saturday morning. Yes, and I love it. They're moving around still. They're up and about and things like that for their own health. And he was a doctor, so he still works. So that's good for him. But you're right. I mean, you got to think about that. I see, for instance, my mom, who was a single mom most of her life. She's in her 50s now, and she's got, like, thanks to me, she's got a little bit of retirement going for her now, but she went so long without it that she's so far behind. And she's at a point where she's like, she'd have to work the rest of her life in order to survive. And I don't want that for any of my listeners. I don't want that for my mom. I don't want that for myself. And that's why it's like, take this stuff serious. There are options out there. There are people like you that can help them, guide them if they need that structure, but do it. Yeah. Your future matters. What you leave for your kids can matter. I mean, anything, it's important. And I love what you do. I think that, like I said, is awesome. It's awesome that you do what you do. And tell me a little bit about your podcast as well and how that.
Oh, yeah. So I kicked that off in April, and episode 26 just released this week. So this week's episode was all about when you should use a financial coach and when you should use a financial advisor. So if you're wondering what that conflict is, if you're like, why would I need both? Go give it a listen. But I really just start out, the very first ones are very, budgeting. I cover all the budgeting. I talk about savings. I talk about emergency funds. And then because I target Gen Xers, I did a kind of what the financial outlook from when we were born to current had been. And I know I get people asking me like, hey, can you talk about a Roth? And I'm like, do you know a Roth came out while I was in college? It was not already there. It was brand new. And so recognizing the fact that even as Gen Xers, all of our retirement products are new. They're new to us. And I think that's why a lot of, like, probably your mom, anybody else around that age, they're new. So our parents didn't have it. They didn't understand it. So to relay that, information. So, I understand a Roth now, but I never participated because I was out before I got a full understanding of it. But I did participate in all the others. There's so many out there. Make sure they fit your situation and, support you in that way. But my podcast, I cover a whole lot of things. I've done guests. If you're into real estate investing, I have a real estate investor on there. She's amazing. I have a guest with a financial advisor on what to expect, working with them. What does that look like? What should you look for? What should you ask them? So just trying to help everybody gain the knowledge in all of those areas of finances so that they can either do it on their own or be better prepared when they reach out to somebody to help them.
Oh yes, that's awesome. I love it. And you said you had a daughter as well. How old is she?
She's 25. So she finished college and what, 2 years ago, year and a half ago, about the same time, I think she graduated and then I retired. She works at the prison, but yeah, trying to get instilled in her head to start setting money aside today, $20, $20 a paycheck. And I know things are tight, expensive, but hopefully you can scrape $20.
Yeah.
And the sooner you can do it, it'll take that time, right, to compound and go. So if you're still very young, 20s, 30s, even 40s, just really start somewhere. That's what you really need to do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's nothing like now, right, to get started. I've always
Exactly.
part of my beliefs is like we love to hide behind that. Oh, I'll do it when I'll wait until the kids are grown, or I'll wait until this happens before I, it's like, no, it's actually not going to probably even happen until you really start accepting your now and appreciating where you are now and just getting started. Do something, like you say, baby steps, $20. A lot of us, that's not the worst thing in the world. It can be tight for some people, but then, okay, fine, $5, $10, whatever you can do, to get yourself more disciplined, more structured, and just do something.
Yes, exactly. Starting at the beginning for sure. I know when you mentioned cash envelopes, I use them for a period of time as well. But while we were using them, we ended up with my sister's house. She ended up passing and we had co-signed on her house with her. So all of a sudden we have a second mortgage payment on top of what we already have. But those cash envelopes saved us. They saved us. I have such fond memories of them. So if you're somebody that's in a disconnect with your money, honestly, start there. It gave me so much, looking into where things were going, how things were going, you saying, I put money in a way. So during this time frame, my daughter comes home and she's like, oh, hey, I need $150 for band tomorrow. And I'm like, okay, let's go to our envelopes, And so on there, I had the minimum amount that needed to be in there. And so I pulled out everything that was extra. I had more than enough. I'm like, here's your cash and good luck,
Yep.
So really, I know cash seems very antiquated, but to get in with your spending habits, the knowledge of your money, I say go back there as much as you can. Mm-hmm. And then, yes, teach yourself. And within a year, maybe two, you can segue to a different plan because you know your spending habits now.
Exactly. And, just for those out there who are like, oh, I never have cash on hand, blah, blah, blah. Because that used to be my problem because I'm big on my debit cards. But what I used to do as a tip is every time I went grocery shopping, I pulled $10 or $20 out of cash every time. I'm like, well, if I'm going to be here grocery shopping, I might as well just add an extra extra. And then that's where I would get my cash built up right there. It's like, I made a discipline thing, like, okay, hey, I'm ready grocery shopping. Let me just pull out a $10. Let me pull out $20. And that is a great way. If you're not somebody who technically has access to cash all the time, or, isn't like that, when you're out shopping, there you go. Just pull a little extra out in cash and put it away.
Exactly. I love it. I love it. And it's those little tricks that we have to figure out what works for us.
Exactly.
So yeah. So that's how I got to my end of the road, right? I read blogs, and then I started, because blogs were big for a time, and then it was podcasts. So then I listened to podcasts, I read books, and I just listened to what people were doing and what was working for them, and decided if I thought that would work for me, and gave it a try. So, honestly, consume as much knowledge you can that way that people are doing, and just figure out what's going to work for you and go do it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a big point right there. It's like, you're right. What sometimes works for somebody may not always work for you, but that's why you expand your horizon and learn from so many different people, because something that they do may work for you, and you won't know until you get out there to listen and hear them and, build that, that knowledge. And so, I think that's so awesome. And again, I thank you for sharing all this with the listeners, because I think this is a very tough subject for a lot of people. When it comes to that guilt and that shame, sometimes we feel as moms, when we feel like we're letting the family down, maybe because we're not making enough, or, finances aren't as easy going and flowing as we want them to be. How do you help them and through that space as far as that emotional part of it?
Yeah. And I think a lot of those emotions come from moms wanting to do everything they can for their kids. And honestly, you are. But being able to set boundaries for yourself and then express those to your children is very important. But don't tell them you don't have money. Don't tell them there's not enough. Just tell them, we are not spending on our money on that right now. So we can get these things, maybe this time we can, and just learning to just explain to them like what reality is, and they'll be okay. But I know a lot of moms I've talked to in the past are like, well, I was always told we don't have the money, we can't afford it, we don't make that much money, and I don't want to do that. And I'm like, I was fortunate enough that my mom was always diverting. So instead of saying, Henleys were the big thing. That's the thing I remember. The shirts, they were the Henleys. I don't even know what they cost. And I'm like, hey, Mom, I want one. School was starting. And she's like, let's go see if we can find an inexpensive one at Kmart. And I'm like, great. And that was fine with me. It wasn't that we can't afford it. Mm-hmm. It was just diverting to the thing that we could afford, the thing that we should buy, the thing that we, and so just doing that. I know I was working with a client last month, and she's like, I really have a hard time telling my kids no. So create in your budget what you can say yes to, and then let them know, okay, if I tell you yes on this, you'll have to forego for a couple more weeks till we have that money again. And just let them know, that money is not free flowing. It does have limits. I worked with a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old in conjunction with their parents and helping them with their finances. And I asked them the question, where does money come from? Well, the 14-year-old looks at her mom, and I'm like, no, it doesn't come from your mom, And so when I asked the 16-year-old, and he goes, well, from the mint. And I'm like, yes, ultimately it's printed at the mint, but let's get back to the middle here. You have to work for money. And so just talking to your kids about money in that general sense of, you work for your money, you have to save it. It only goes so far. We get to choose what we want to spend it on. We get to choose our priorities, and so then that way, hopefully they understand, like, your household is choosing to spend on these things, but that other household is choosing to spend on those things, as opposed to, oh, well, they're richer, so they can afford all those things, So just choosing your words wisely, and just letting them know that we are choosing within our household. So I have an episode that your listeners may absolutely love. His name is Sam X. Rennick, and his mission is educating 3 to 7-year-olds. So he, very, very young. He's got songs, riddles, all of the things. But I had him come on, and I love his story. And his story about his parents telling him, You don't work. You don't get to make the decisions with money. If you want those things, you can work for me and we'll find a way to earn some money. But just his perspective on how he was talked to about money as well is another eye-opening experience. So,
yeah. And it's funny. That's something I've learned that's very powerful is how that builds scarcity mindsets and fixed mindsets in our own children.
yeah.
Because like I was like that growing up. My mom was a single mom. We were poor. We were always living on welfare and things like that. It was always like money doesn't grow on trees and you can't afford that. And in life, you got to work your butt off in order to barely get by. So it's like, even if you work hard, it doesn't matter. You still barely can get by. So I grew up with that mentality and fear of money. And that was one of my favorite transformations. And is an ongoing transformation, honestly, because everything is always an ongoing thing. But my relationship with money, never realized how terrible it was and how scared I was. I kind of almost hoarded a little bit because I was so afraid. Like I would have a little bit in a savings account, but have all this credit card debt. And then people tell me, no, you should pay off this credit card debt. I'm like, no, I know. I'd rather see that little bit in that savings account because it makes me feel more safe than even though I was spending all the higher interest rates on these credit cards. Because there was like a safetyness to that. So it's like all about shifting that mindset and seeing the long-term goals. That's not easy for everybody. And I get it because I've been there and even now am still working to work through that all the time. And I'm very cautious of how I talk to my kids about it because it was instilled in me to think that way, to speak that way. And so changing my language has been a really awesome part of making sure that my kids don't ever feel like we're poor, like we can't afford it. Like that's who we are. No, it's just a matter of, like you said, delegating, okay, well, we can do this, or we can, we're not going to do this right now, but it doesn't mean we can't do it down the road. It's just not at this time. And I think that's awesome, especially because I do have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. And then I have a 15-year-old that I'm also teaching him how to start thinking smart, because I told him, I was like, you don't want to be in a place where you're in the rat race of having to work to survive. There are ways that you can start early on to actually make money work for you and be smart about it. And then you have an easier life. And there's so many people out there who have such intelligence who you can learn from. So start young. That's one thing I wish I knew and I had, was somebody to teach me at an early age ways that I could earn money, or money could be working for me that I earned. So I'll definitely have to check out that guy on your podcast.
He's awesome. I love him so much. So
that's awesome. Like I said, I can't thank you enough for this. This has been so fun to talk about and so good and so important. Is there any other advice that you'd like to share with the listeners before we end the show?
As a mom and as I'm out of the busy, I'm into the empty nest. But remembering back to all of that and just trying to fit in all of your responsibilities, try and prioritize and see if you can make room for money. And you can simplify your money journey, your money, responsibilities, but just spend some time in there somehow, somewhere, and begin budgeting. Like I said, it's not going to be perfect. You're going to have growing pains and all of that, but just start. Because the sooner you start, the further you're going to be. If you don't ever start, you're not going to, gain any ground at all and be able to accomplish anything. So,
Oh, perfect. That's amazing. Absolutely. So anyone who's listening, you make sure to tune in to her podcast, Wealthy After 40. And I'll make sure to include all your information in the show notes so people can find you. Are you on Instagram, Facebook?
Instagram at elevate_finances. So come connect with me there as well.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for being part of my podcast world. My energy.
Yes, I love it.
You're such a sweet soul, and I just am excited for you and your business. It's going to flourish. It's going to grow, and I'm excited to see where you go. Let's stay in touch and let's have an update of how for you and anything new that you've learned, for sure.
Love it. Awesome. Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This was such an important and insightful conversation, and I just loved having Dalene on the show. Here are some takeaways from today's episode. Begin your journey to financial stability by taking small steps, even if it's just $20 per paycheck. Every little bit helps, and it can grow over time. Consider using the cash envelope method, where you allocate cash to different spending categories. It can help you stay disciplined with your budget. Take the time to educate yourself about various financial concepts and tools such as budgeting, savings, and retirement accounts. Learning about different options can empower you to make informed decisions. Don't be afraid to set boundaries with your family and communicate with your children about money. You don't have to say things like we can't afford it. Instead, explain that you are making choices about how to allocate your money. Recognize that your mindset about money can have a profound impact on your financial well-being. Shift from a scarcity mindset to a more positive and abundance-oriented outlook. Teach children about money from a young age. Start with the basics and gradually introduce financial concepts. Help them understand that money is earned through work and that they can make choices about how to spend or save it. Financial education is an ongoing process. Keep learning and seeking information about how to manage your finances effectively. Focus on your long-term financial goals and how your current decisions and savings can contribute to a more secure future. Consider how your financial decisions can support a work-life balance that allows you to enjoy life now while also planning for a comfortable retirement. If you need guidance, consider seeking help from a financial coach or advisor who can provide personalized assistance and strategies to your financial journey. Be sure to subscribe to Dalene's podcast, Wealth After 40, for more great advice and tips on finances, amongst so much more. I will also include her link so you can follow her and contact her for those looking to get her personal guidance with your finances. Finally, subscribe to my podcast and leave me a review. It is most helpful and appreciated. If you know someone who would benefit from listening to this episode, be sure to share it with them. To learn more about how you can work with me, visit me at marydibblecoaching.com or come join my group, Radiant Mom Tribe, on Facebook to stay connected and join other fabulous moms on their journeys. Much love.